Hey, what's up everyone? Hope everyone's doing good. I ain't got no brakes in the truck. They went out. So, I don't have any brakes. So I guess today, we're going to be changing the brakes on my 2001 Silverado 5.3 liter V8. So I'm on my way to go get the new brakes and rotors, and I figured I'd show you guys how long it takes me to stop from going about 50 miles an hour. So up here is a stop sign. Going 50 right now. Stop sign's just over this curve, and I'm gonna start braking now. And it is to the floor. I mean, I'm even pumping them. So yeah, definitely need new brakes. Here's the truck. It is just a work truck. Unfortunately, it is only two-wheel drive, which really stinks. I was trying to get a four-wheel drive, but they're just so expensive. Oh yeah, this is it. I've already had to replace the rear end. The ABS module, that was expensive. That was like $700 or so. Poe's Handyman Services, Columbia, Tennessee. Need any work done, give me a call. Be careful, pay attention to what you're doing. When you're working on cars and jacks, it's not a joke, it's serious. Pay attention to what you're doing, be smart, don't be dumb. First thing you're gonna wanna do is go around and loosen up the lug nuts on the wheels that you're gonna take off. Don't loosen them all the way, just break them free. That way when you get it jacked up in the air, you can just spin them right off and you ain't got to worry about the tire trying to spin or rotate with you. So we'll get this tire off and then we'll get in there. And it's always a good idea to go start here and then jump up here and then down here and then back up here and then over here. You don't want to go clockwise, or especially when you're tightening them. You don't want to tighten them in line because that'll get your wheel out of line and it won't be true and straight. So when you go to put your tires back on, you want to make sure you tighten them in a random pattern. Alrighty, now that you got the tires loosened, now it's time to get it ready to get jacked up. I'll show you where I put the jack. Oh, it's crawling down here. Alright, you kind of see how I got it set up. I got a jack stand over there underneath the rear axle. And then I got the jack, I'm going to jack it up where the leaf springs are connected to the axle. And then I also like to put a jack on this side on the frame. So go ahead, get this jacked up. We'll get this wheel off. And that cracking, that's just that 4x4 block I have under there, so nothing to be worried about. Just listen, pay attention. Go slow. Now you can see the rear tire starting to spin. That means she's coming up off the ground. We don't need her up too much, just enough to get the tire off and back on. And that should be good right there. Now I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna raise up those jack stands. Alrighty, we got her all jacked up now. Get this tire popped off and then we can start getting into the calipers, the rotors, brake pads, and all the good fun stuff. Alrighty, there's all the lug nuts. Let's pop this tire off. See what we're dealing with. Alright, so here's your rotor. If you feel like this, you can feel some grooves and ridges. It's an uneven wear pattern, and you can feel a pretty decent lip right here on the edge of the rotor. And it pretty much tells you when it's time to replace your rotors. I mean, there's a pretty good lip there, about the size of a nickel, so I'd say it's about time to get replaced. Here's your caliper, right, and here's your brake pads. Let's see if we can get you in here and look through the back side. That's what it looks like from the back. The side, now you can kind of get a better idea how I got this jacked up. And then the underside. Brakes. And you can kind of see the bolts that we're going to be taking off too. But it's always a good idea to have a container or a little bucket or something handy so you can put all the bolts and nuts and stuff in there so they don't get lost or dirty. So I'm going to go grab a bucket and be right back. What you're going to want to do now is get the caliper off. To do that, 2 bolts. Well, there's a few different ways you can do it, but this is the way I do it. There's actually 4 bolts total, but yeah, this one right here. I'm not sure if you guys can see, it's really tight in here. This one right here, and then there's this one right here, and then there's 2 more right below this part. Let's see if you guys can see it. Kinda. There's one, the other one's like right there. So it's a 13 to get the caliper off. Not the caliper bracket right here. The caliper itself. This is just the bracket for it right here. So go ahead and get that off. It can be a pain in the butt sometimes, so it might be a good idea to go ahead and get some WD-40 or some PB Blast or something sprayed in there a little bit. Just loosen it up some. So go ahead and we'll take these out all the way. These are special, so do not lose them and do not get them dirty. Now, normally, it's a bolt like that, but there's like a rod part to it that gives you the cushion for the caliper. I don't know if that quite makes sense. I'm not a mechanic. I mean, I know how to do some stuff. All right, get this bottom one out. There's the other one. Alright, so now this caliper part should come right off. Yep, there she is. Single piston or whatever you want to call it. It's a little dirty. Not too bad. We'll set it up here. You don't want to kink and stretch this hose too much because that's your brake fluid in your line. So you really want to be careful with that and not mess it up. Alright, so now next thing we can do, pop off the caliper bracket. 2 bolts, 18 millimeter for the caliper brackets. Might be able to see where the bolts are a little better now that the caliper is actually out of the way. So you got one right here and the other one's right here. These 2, and then this whole bracket will come off with the pads. So we'll get that off and we'll get on to the next step. Alrighty, there we go. Alrighty, now she should just come right off. Just like that. So here's your bracket and your brake pads. Sorry if it's getting a little loud. There's a cornfield across the road and he just happened to go out there with his tractor right now and start doing whatever it is he's doing. So I'm sorry if it's a little loud. But once you get that off, you can inspect your brake pads, see if there's a uneven wear pattern. You basically just put your brake pads together and you hold them up like this You can see, I mean, they look pretty even. There's about the same amount of brake pad on each one. So they don't look horrible. So, I mean, there's still a good amount of brake on there. I mean, the rotors are definitely pretty shot. Oh, and by the way, I did already do the front. I'm sorry, I should have filmed that part and showed you guys that too. So forgive me for that. This is just the rear. But I'm sure I'll be changing my brakes again at some point. So I will be sure to make a video about the front. All right, pop her off. Sometimes they don't want to come right off. It might be a little seized. So just take a mallet. Just give her a few love taps, you know. Slide her off. There we go. Yeah. It's seen better days. Not sure if you guys can quite see the lip that I'm talking about. Alrighty. We'll get that off. We'll look in here and kind of just see how everything else looks. I just want to be able to stop when I'm going down the road at 50 miles an hour and pull up to a stop sign. You know, I want to be able to stop. I don't want to go shooting out, flying into a field, into a bunch of cows. I mean, you would get a lot of meat. Nah, bad idea. Don't do it. Alrighty. Here's the new rotor. Yeah. Oh, got a little bit of surface rust. That's alright though. Go ahead, pop her on. Just like so. Get your brake pads. Oh. Make sure they're the right size and the same size as the old ones. I think we're good. And again, guys, I'm sorry if the video's not the best or the audio might be a little jacked or still kind of new to the whole YouTube thing. I'm learning, I'm trying, I'm getting there. It'll just take a little bit of time. Alrighty. So now, we want to position, get the brake pads into the bracket. Now, sometimes it can be a little tricky. Other times it's pretty easy. What happens a lot of the time though is you'll get the brake pads in there. You'll go to put this back on there and you'll have the brake pad upside down or in backwards. It happens, so just double check. Make sure. Just like so. Alrighty. She's on there. Set this back up there and get it mounted back on. Now, a good rule to follow when you're tightening stuff back up, especially in the automotive world, always do it hand tight first, everything, and then go back with a ratchet or a wrench and snug them down. You don't want to get anything cross-threaded. You don't want to have anything break or snap or anything like that, so just keep that in mind. Pop these bolts right back in. Get them snug, finger tight. Now, a lot of people, they'll tell you that you gotta put like brake lube on and this and that, and yeah, I mean it helps. It's not necessary. You don't really need it. It's not gonna hurt you if you don't lube your dang brakes. I'm sorry, but it's not gonna do nothing. Alrighty, got them all snugged in hand. Go ahead and ratchet them down. Maybe. Alrighty, now the caliper. Now this part is a little different. You will need some type of press device. A C-clamp might work if you got a big enough one and you're strong enough. But what you're gonna need to do, this is a caliper press. It goes, I'll get you a little closer. This piston right here, whatever you want to call her, in order to get this caliper back on, you have to compress this back in here. This is what gives you your brakes. Every time you push the pedal, this is what is moving, what's driving your brakes. You need to get this pushed back in so you can put this back on over your pads. In order to do that, you're going to take this here, you're going to set the flat metal part on the inside right here. I loosened it up a little bit. And a little more. This part will go right inside the piston there. Be a little careful though, because sometimes I've had the head of these get stuck in there and they will not come out. So maybe lube it up first. That might be a good idea actually. Just put some WD in there. And then go ahead and start tightening it. Just make sure it's centered. You don't want to have this get stuck in there. It turns into a big fiasco then. But just keep going until you start to feel it tighten up. Until you start to feel it tighten up. Holy cow. Until you start to feel it tightening up. What is going on? Alright, there we go. Make sure your brake pads are all compressed on your caliper thingy there and start twisting. Now, you'll see this part, it'll start moving in. And it's not that hard to turn. But after you get it fully compressed, make sure you got your bolts ready. You want to try to get it lined up fairly quick. Sometimes they can start to compress themselves again, and then you'll have to try to get it back off, compress it again, and put it back on. So just keep that in mind. Alrighty. Got her. Just like so. Put her back, line up your holes. Get started. The bottom. Finger tight first. Now, after you get this on here, you're pretty much done. Other than, you know, getting the tire back on. One thing to check though before you do go ahead and put your tire back on. Go ahead and get up in your truck or your car or whatever it is. Push the brake pedals and see if you can get them to stiffen up. If not, if they still feel, you know, loose and soft, you might have to bleed your brakes. That'll be a video for another time or something. I've only done it a handful of times, and I hear it varies from vehicle to vehicle, so we won't get into that today. But alrighty, snug down those two bolts, put the tire back on, and by golly, I think we just changed our brakes and rotors. Not left-handed. don't really like how it does that. I mean, every time I change brakes and rotors, though, the rotors are always sloppy till you get the tire on. But I don't know, you just kind of think that it wouldn't do that. All right, let's get the wheel on. Enough monkey business. Another good thing you probably should do when you take your tires off, especially if you got a lot of weight like in your tire. See all those? Yeah, she was really out of balance when I got these rims. But yeah, you want to put it back on the exact same way you took it off. That way everything is still in balance. Alrighty. Hand tight. You want to make sure that the tire's pushed in all the way. You don't want any slop. Slop is not good. All right, now watch. I'm starting over here. Then I'm going to jump over here. And then I'm going to go here, then down here, then back over here. Alrighty, now that you got them all tight, you want to go around one last time. Make sure you got them all real nice and snug. Well, did you guys just see that? Whole thing just freaking blew apart. Alrighty, now that you got that tire back on and all locked down, ain't gonna go nowhere. Time to move those jack stands. Remove the floor jack, drop her down, and drive off into the sunset. You're gonna want to do it slow, don't do it fast. Take your time, go slow. You don't want to break nothing, don't need to hurt yourself. Make sure everything's out of the way. Let her down nice and slow. Pull that jack out. And there you go. You just changed your brakes.